Well, this morning we are very pleased to welcome back Cyndi Swall. She's no stranger to us. We've had her before and enjoyed her insight and perspectives. We welcome you, Cyndi. Her topic today is coming home to yourself, giving yourself the gift of freedom. Cyndi is a New Thought student and teacher, and she has been a popular speaker, and she's also a life coach for those of us who need all the help we can get. So Cyndi, welcome back.
So we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. You probably recognize these words from the original Declaration of Independence, but never in the history of the United States has the concept of freedom been more challenged and more questioned than over the past year and a half. And so, and I'm not just talking about the quarantine and vaccines and wearing masks and that sort of thing. I'm mostly alluding to like the cultural toll, and really on a much more intimate level, just the personal weight that we've all been hauling around, right? That makes it difficult, not just for us to breathe, but for us to hesitate to even make future plans. Historically in my coaching practice, majority of the time people would come to me just wanting to up-level their life in some way. But what I found is that recently, in the past few months, the primary goal for most people, quite honestly, is just to be able to exhale. Like we're feeling though the winds of change right now significantly, and we have the opportunity now to start creating the life that we want, to start taking back control of our daily experience. I had a thought the other day as I pondered just the flat out weirdness of it all, everything that's going on right now. And being from a New Thought background, I couldn't help but notice the analogy between what we've been going through and the hero's journey. So when you think about the hero's journey, and I'll explain this to you if you're less familiar with it. In the beginning, you set up the hero or heroine, right? So to learn their story. So we get to know something about them. It's a great source of basically a great source of conflict. So in the beginning, you set up your hero, you learn something about them, you find out what their source of conflict is, you find out a little bit about their capabilities, their outlook on life. So you find out a little bit about them and the people around them. And then after facing many foes and overcoming a bunch of obstacles, at the very end, they win the reward, they get the girl, whatever, right? So at the very end, so that's kind of the hero's journey. So they start conceptually with this, like everything is ordinary, something shakes stuff up, then they go through all these challenges and then they find their way back home. And so needless to say, the story of 2021 is nearing its closure. But if we were to follow the hero's journey through the evolution of what has happened to us over the course of the last year and a half, then we can choose to ultimately triumph at the end of all, when it all is said and done. Now, every story has a beginning and it has a middle and it has an end. In the world that we live in, we know that metaphysically there never really is an end. But in our lives, in our human body, there is a series of short stories that we tell along the way. And so this is really what I want to talk about as it relates to the short story. I'm going to share a slide with you really quickly. So if you're less familiar with the hero's journey, I want to show you what it looks like. Here's my slide. If you look at the hero's journey, it actually happens in 3 acts, right? So in the first act is what is called the ordinary world. And so Joseph Campbell is probably most known for the original hero's journey. So this is kind of his model. So it all starts in the ordinary world. So this is kind of everything's going along just fine, right? And then all of a sudden there's this call to action or a call to adventure. And then we take a look at it and we're like, I don't know if I should do anything with that. Or you start to question yourself and you kind of leave it alone. So we move into refusal. And then all of a sudden, the hero meets somebody who inspires them or gives them some insight of some kind that makes them think, you know what, I have this quest that I have to handle. So they cross the threshold, they start having all these tests, meeting all these allies, they determine who their enemies are. Then they approach the inmost cave, which I'll describe to you a little bit better as well. Then they move into the big ordeal, right? So this is the greatest challenge that they're going to face. And then of course they go through the overcoming, they seize the reward or they seize the sword, if you will. Then they start making their way back in Act 3 to their original world, right? And so they go through some kind of a resurrection where they become a different person and they return with the elixir or the whatever it is that makes things different for them or improves their life in some way. So that in essence is the hero's journey. So I'm going to walk you through that as it relates to what we're going through right now. So I'm going to go ahead and quit sharing my screen here. She says with confidence. Here we go. Stop share. All right. So just refresher clarity if you're kind of unfamiliar with it. So if you think about it, though, you can track this outline through just about every fiction book or every movie you've ever seen. The hero's journey will start with the very first phase, and this is ordinary world. Now, this is where the hero exists before his present day actual story begins, if you will. He's oblivious to the adventures that are to come. It's like this is his safe place, right? So everyday life where we learn to be critical about the details of our hero, his true nature, his capabilities. So we really start taking a look at what makes it easier for us to identify with him or determine like what are his human qualities, if you will. So this, when you think about it, is where we were sleepwalking through life back in 2019. I mean, we were busy, weren't we? We're out and about, like making our lives work. We had goals to meet, we had meetings to attend, we had mortgages to pay. All of those things were happening all while the phone is ringing and the laptop is pinging. And when we got home, we had Amazon and Netflix to make us feel good enough about our lives long enough to wake up the next day and just do it all over again. So we were sleep deprived, we were malnourished, we were exhausted, but it was the devil we knew, right? So everything felt like normal. So that was our lives. So from there, we moved to the call to adventure. So the call to adventure is really the quest piece. So in the hero's journey, their adventure begins as some kind of a call to action. So their inside is saying to them, something needs to happen here. So it could be a direct threat to his safety or his loved ones or the peace of the community that he lives within. But anyway, whatever it is, it may not be a gunshot. It could simply be a phone call or a conversation or something that disrupts the comfort of the hero's ordinary life. Okay. And it presents a challenge and a quest that must be undertaken. So, I mean, do I really need to make this analogy for you? I mean, I think we all pretty much know the list of obstacles that threaten the safety of our loved ones over the course of the last year and a half. And whether you believe it was real or imagined, you can't deny that this pandemic and all of the political unrest turned our literal world upside down. It did. And we know something had to be done. So in order for us to maintain our safety, our personal sanity, there's something that needed to happen. So that led us to number 3 in Act 1, which is really around the refusal of the call, meaning in the hero's journey, although the hero might be eager to like accept the challenge, he's still kind of taking a look at the whole, I'm not really sure if I'm up to this kind of a challenge. Do I have the skill that I need? So all these second thoughts and deep personal doubts start to come up for the hero right now. And when this happens, the hero refuses the call and is going to probably suffer in some way, somehow. So it's kind of like the whole, I know I should be doing something, but I'm not. It's not quite uncomfortable enough. So that's where the hero is in the refusal of the call. And the problem he faces might seem like it's too much to handle or maybe not his to do. And we do that, right? We've definitely done that. It's like everybody, the government needs to fix this, or the scientists need to fix this, or somebody needs to handle it. So basically the problem he faces might seem like it's too much to, or more than he wants to take on. That's like, when you think about like, I'm going to have to leave the comfort of my home, the understanding of where I am right now. And so this would be our own response, once again, that helps us kind of connect with this hero. So we're connected with them. And think about it, for several months, the majority of the population, most of us, were paralyzed by fear, right? Not just for our health, but also the possibility of job or income loss or terrifying isolation. Those of us who lived alone, who didn't have anyone else to talk to during this period of time. I mean, we really felt helpless, I think, most of the time in the face of this unknown terrorist that we were dealing with. And so we just hold ourselves up in our home, didn't we? We just like, you know what, we'll just stay home and wait till this thing goes away. So that was our refusal to call. But remember, this is the point now where the hero will start to meet a mentor of some kind. So this is a pretty crucial turning point in the storyline where the hero desperately needs some kind of guidance. I mean, we just don't have any guidance. And so he's given something, either an object of importance or some insight of some kind or a secret that he learns. something to help him handle this dilemma that he's facing. So the hero, at this point, whatever the mentor provides the hero is going to help them kind of dispel their doubts and their concerns and give him the courage that it takes to be able to move up to begin his quest a little bit. So that's what's starting to happen. The mentor in our story could be a person, but it's more likely a metaphor of some kind for kind of making the decision either to educate ourselves or to make preparations of some kind or to take precautions. So running out of external options, some of us might have even stopped to really choose to go within and start to listen to our non-physical support system and our own intuition for guidance of some kind, right? So that might be where some of us went. So in Jerry Jampolsky's book, has anybody read Love is Letting Go of Fear? Show of hands. It's a fantastic book. If you haven't gotten it, get a copy of it. It's an ancient book. It's a super easy read. But I read it when I was in my 20s, and I have probably bought it for 100 people since then. It's a really simple little read. But in Jerry Jampolsky's book, the primary concept of this particular book is he reminds us is that love and fear can never reside in the same place at the same time. Right. So this is where when we move into Act 2, crossing the threshold, the hero is now ready to act upon this call to adventure. Right. He's going to begin his quest here, whether it's physical or spiritual or emotional. He may go willingly, or quite honestly, he may be forced to do it. He might be pushed into it for whatever way. Either way, he finally crosses the threshold. Right. So he's now moving into the story that's going to be created here. It may be by leaving home for the first time. It could be by doing something he's never done before that he's scared to do. However, the threshold, when it presents itself, this action signifies the hero's commitment, if you will, to his journey and whatever might be in store for him as he moves through this. Now, I want you to learn from the story of the mother eagle, because this is one of my favorite analogies. So if anybody's familiar with eagles, if you studied birds at all, what you learn, first of all, is the eagle perches really, really high, like up into the cliffs or high into the trees. And so when that happens, it's a terrifying prospect for a tiny little baby eagle to like fling its body off of the side of this cliff for the first time that it flies. And so the mother eagle knows this. So here's what she does, is that before she lays her eggs, as she's building her nest to prepare for laying her eggs, she'll actually start the foundation of the nest with like thorns and bristle and thicket and things like that. And then she will pat it on top with softer materials so that the eggs are safe. But here's what happens, is that once the eggs hatch, the baby eaglets are born, as they start to outgrow that nest and they're not showing any signs of actually like flying off on their own, the mama eagle, day by day, a little bit at a time, will start to pull some of the padding out of that nest. Right? Until it gets to the point where it's like so uncomfortable that it's the pain of staying there is worse than the risk of flying. Now, I know that sounds a little bit sadistic to some of you, but what that mama eagle knows is if those babies stay there, they're going to die there. Like they can't stay there, they have to go. And sometimes we're like those baby eagles, right? We stay there so long, or we stay in this place of discomfort for a really long time. And when we do that, it actually puts us in a situation that's more challenging. Right. So when we think about it, once we realized in our story that this problem was not going to go away on its own, then we were forced to figure out new ways to live. Look at where we are right now, right? The Center for Universal Oneness had to find a way to serve your congregation online, different ways to reach out that you didn't have before. And many of us had to find new ways to do business so that we could support our family, right? And that takes us then in our hero's journey to where we really start to identify the tests and the allies and who our enemies might be, enemies, if you will. We know nothing and no is against us, but we're looking at it metaphorically, right? So now finally out of his comfort zone, the hero is confronted with even more difficulty, right? All different series of challenges that are going to test him in a variety of ways. Obstacles thrown in his path, whether they're physical hurdles or emotional problems or people bent on thwarting his progress, whatever that looks like. The hero now must overcome each challenge he's presented in order to get to his ultimate goal. So, I mean, let's face it, this last year and a half, honestly, has been like being thrown into a 3D Super Mario video game. Does anybody feel that way? It's like we spend our days like dodging judgment or jumping over minefields of, or just reaching for some sort of relief of some kind. And so it seems that no matter what our stance is on any given subject, there's always like a firing squad of people that are trying to shame or discredit us or make us challenge our own beliefs, if you will. So the hero now finds out who can be trusted, who can't be trusted. And when I say who, I'm talking about like social media or the news channels or whatever. It's like, who is right and who's like, who knows, right? And so the hero is spending all of this time right now trying to dissect all this information and people that are before him. He might earn some allies. He might meet some enemies as well in this process. And this is the stage where the skills and powers are tested. And every obstacle that he faces, he gains a deeper insight into his character. He identifies with himself, and we identify him with a little bit more. And truly, sometimes it's our naysayers and our adversaries that are our greatest teachers in this process, because they teach us to follow our own instincts and to trust our own inner guidance, right? So this is where the hero starts to really get to the place where he gets to the door or approaches that inmost cave. Now, the inmost cave is the one that confuses people the most, because they're like, I thought he was already in these obstacles. But this is the part where inmost, think of the word in, right? When we talk about inner, everything has been an external problem up to this point. But this is the inmost cave, represents the things in the hero's story. Could be an actual location, but more likely is going to be an inner conflict of some kind, where he starts to take a look at what he's had to face. He approaches the cave and he has to make some final preparations for taking the final leap into this great adventure that he's on. So at the threshold of the in cave, he once again is going to face his own doubts, his own fears. He's questioning whether or not he's made the right decisions. And this is where he's going to really have to stop in this cave and take some time to reflect. And you'll hear this sometime if you're on social media at all. You'll see somebody that will like disappear off of social media for 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden they come back on. Or somebody that's like been in touch with you really frequently, and all of a sudden they evaporate and they come back. And so we take it personally. But in reality, we have to separate ourselves from all the data that's coming at us for periods of time so that we can determine what's real and what's not, what serves us and what doesn't. So at this threshold, this is like a brief respite. It kind of helps the audience understand the magnitude of the ordeal that's about to come across. And it kind of starts to escalate the tension in the story, right? So Melanie, you wrote a book, you know, it's like you have to like build the tension. You got to create the story. You got to make people worried for the safety of your hero. So, and this is the phase of our story where we begin to understand that our world will never again look the way it looked before. Like we talk about, we want everything to go back to normal, but what we know is that we don't want everything to go back to normal. And maybe we've grieved a little here about like really wanting things to be the way they used to be. And to a certain degree, you might still be sitting with your thoughts and ideas and kind of wondering what's next for you. I mean, we all are still doing that. So now in the hero story, we move into the actual ordeal, right? And this is the Supreme Ordeal, which may be a dangerous physical test, still could be a deep inner crisis, but this is something that the hero is going to have to face. And in order to survive for the world in which the hero lives, right? Because this is starting to start thinking about, it's not just the hero's existence. It's like, wait a minute, I'm on this quest to make sure that the people that I left behind are going to be left in a better position too. So whether it be facing his greatest fear or his most deadly foe, the hero must draw upon all his skills and experiences right now, because he's going to like gather everything he's got, everything that he can muster in the inmost cave in order to overcome whatever this difficult challenge is going to be. Like we don't know what this next big thing is going to be. So only through some sort of death, if you will, can this hero be reborn. So the ordeal is going to take him close to his death, and not necessarily a physical death, but experience a metaphorical resurrection of some kind that somehow grants him some sort of greater understanding or insight, whatever's necessary to fulfill his destiny and to reach the journey's end. Now, this is the high point of the hero story, where everything that he holds dear is put on the line. So if he fails, he's either going to die or life as he knows it will never be the same again. So coming to a place of ultimate acceptance, and this is the part I want you to hear. Coming to a place of ultimate acceptance is our first step to finding our way home. and conquering our demons. Learning to love what is, like not judge it, but to just be, and I'm not saying don't do anything about it. I'm saying to just come to the clarity around the fact that this is the way things are right now. Not that they can't be changed, but quit fighting against our adversaries, whether people or beliefs or cultural shifts. If we quit fighting those things, this is one of the toughest challenges that you're going to face in this lifetime. Because there's actually a line in one of my favorite Don Henley songs. The song's called My Thanksgiving. And it says, have you ever noticed that an angry man can only get so far until he reconciles the way he thinks things ought to be with the way things are? So that moves us into the reward. This is where our hero is seizing the sword. After defeating the enemy, surviving death, overcoming his greatest personal challenges, the hero is ultimately transformed into a new state, a new person, a new belief system. So when that happens, the reward may come in a lot of forms. It could be an object or importance or power or a secret or even reconciliation, maybe with a loved one or an ally. But whatever the treasure is, it may well facilitate his return back into his ordinary world. Remember, it's never going to be the same, but it's back into the space where he came from. So, but he can't stop and celebrate right now, right? Because he's still not home yet. He has to prepare for the last leg of his journey. And so being able to do the things that we're doing now, like being able to get back into the office, being able to go to the grocery store without a mask on, might be providing us some temporary relief, or even a false sense of security, if you will. It doesn't mean that you're not actually safe or physically safe, but I'm talking about like the emotional damage that's been done. Making sure that you're taking the time to heal your soul and to trust in your own ability to navigate whatever life throws at you in the future. I mean, you've survived this, right? You've gotten through to this phase, and now you can move into Act 3. Jeff, you've got to be loving this, right? Anytime you put anything in Acts, Jeff's like, yeah, I'm all about that, right? I'm following you now. So this is where he starts to really find his way back. So this is the stage in the hero's journey that represents kind of a reverse echo of the call to adventure that he had earlier in the story, the thing that made him cross the threshold. And now he must return to whatever it is that's before him now, right? So now he's going to go home with his reward, but this time it's not with the anticipation of danger. The danger is being replaced with a sense of acclaim and perhaps vindication or absolution. And so he's going back from a different place. And I love the first lines in the Daughtry song that we played for you a few minutes ago that says, going to the place where love and feeling good never cost a thing. And I want you to hear that, because it's the knowing that true and real love is never something that you have to earn, right? It's 100% your birthright. And the only thing you have to do is just claim it, to say, thank you. One of my favorite affirmations that I've repeated 1 million times over the course of the last 2 years is I just open my arms out as wide as I can get them. And I say, I open myself fully to give and receive deeper love. Like as far back as you can get it. I want everybody to do that with me right now. Just open your arms out as wide as you can get them, all the way back. And just say to yourself, I open myself fully to give and receive deeper love. And so when you actually open yourself up to that, the only thing you can do here really is to claim that. And I'm not talking about romantic love, though that has also manifested. The hero now understands that fear cannot live where love exists. It can't. Fear cannot live where love exists. So if you found yourself in a place of just like paralyzing fear over the course of the last 1.5 years, let me just say, first and foremost, cut yourself some well-deserved slack there, because everybody has. Anytime you go into an unknown like this, it's going to create quantum amounts of fear, because just like, am I making the right decisions? Am I doing the right things? Right? So that fear is normal, and there's no way for it to propagate itself if we come from a place of consistent love. But the hero's journey is not quite over yet, right? And he may still have one last push back into the ordinary world. The moment before the hero finally commits to this stage of his journey may be a moment in which he may choose between his own personal objective and that of the higher cause. Like, how is this going to impact the greater whole? So now he moves into number 11, which is resurrection. This is the climax, right? Where the hero has to make his final and most dangerous encounter with what we call death. The final battle also represents something far greater than just the hero's existence. The outcome is far-reaching consequences and it impacts back in the ordinary world all of the people and the lives that he left behind. So if he fails, he doesn't just fail for himself. He's going to suffer, but others are going to suffer. And so there's a lot of weight on his shoulders. But in a movie, this grips the audience, right? Because we are wondering, is he capable of making this happen, right? So the audience feels like a part of the conflict. So they can share the hero's hopes and fears and trepidations. And ultimately, we know in the hero's journey that the hero's going to succeed. We know that. We know what happens at the end of every movie. He's going to destroy his enemy and emerge from the battle cleansed and reborn, right? But it's impossible for us to experience any kind of a personal transformation without it impacting everyone else whose lives we touch. So as the hero of your own journey, we increase our own interpersonal sensitivity, right? We pay attention to how the things that we say and our behaviors and how that impacts the people around us. So we become kinder, right? We pay more attention to the things we say. We judge less, lest we be judged. We start doing all of those things because we have to forgive ourselves as well as others and have we have to forgive ourselves for not having all the answers. We have to forgive ourselves for being afraid. We have to forgive ourselves for everything that we didn't know before we know. And we have to assume positive intent. The final stage of the hero's journey is where he returns with the elixir. This is the final stage where he goes home to his ordinary world and he's changed now. Everything has changed. He's a changed man, right? He's grown as a person. He's learned a lot of things. He's faced enormous challenges that he was able to overcome, even death. But now he gets to look forward to the start of a new life. This is where we are in this pivotal place in where we've been over the course of the last year and a half. The hero might return with fresh hope for the people that he left behind. He might have a direct solution to their problem so he can help them, or perhaps just a new perspective for everyone to consider as they move into this final phase. But the final reward here could be obtained, maybe he obtains something literal or metaphoric, but here's the cause for celebration. Here's where we all get to celebrate together. Never has there been a better time than a day of independence, a day of freedom for us to celebrate the freedom from our negative thinking, the freedom from the fear that has kept us locked away for so long. But the self-realization that the hero brings back to is going to end the strife. Whatever it is, it represents three things. It represents change, it represents success, and it represents proof that he was on his journey. So people that are like acting like this never happened and just trying to sweep it under the rug miss what I talked about last time, which is that sacred opportunity to stop and to reflect and to ask ourselves, what are the things we really want to bring back into our new experience, back into our ordinary world? So the return home signals a need for resolution, not just for us, but for the story's other players, the key players as well. So the heroes, have you ever seen a movie where they tell you what happens to the hero and you're like, what about that person that had this going on over here? Like, whatever happened to him, right? And so we don't want to just see what happens with the hero. We want them to tie it all together in a great big bow so that we understand that we want to make sure that we know that everybody is okay at the end of the story. So the hero's doubters, are going to be ostracized. Of course, the enemies always get punished. The allies are rewarded, but ultimately the hero will return from where he started, but things will clearly never be the same. The chorus of the Daughtry song that we just listened to goes like this. I'm going home to a place where I belong, where love has always been enough for me. Benjamin Franklin stated that the Declaration of Independence just gives you the right to pursue happiness. It doesn't promise you happiness. You still have to go out and get it for yourself. Happy Independence Day. Thank you for letting me spend my morning with you. Good to see you. Love you. To give it back to you, Doug.
It's going to be called a contemplative meditation. And if you'll just get comfortable in your chair and begin to pay attention to your breathing, we'll do this. As you breathe in and out, be aware of any sensation of tension or tightness in your body, and just breathe it out. Settle inside yourself. Focus on what's within. Move deeper into the silence of your mind. Eliminate the chatter of day-to-day activity. And just think about the presentation you've just heard. And think about the concept of freedom. How do you give yourself the gift of freedom? What is the nature of freedom for you? Maybe the nature of freedom for you is having what you want. Or maybe it's being able to do what you want. Maybe the nature of freedom is to be without limitation or pain or restriction. Maybe freedom is being without financial worries or medical problems. Maybe freedom is having lots of physical energy to do everything you want to do. Maybe freedom is feeling safe, living a life without fear. Maybe freedom is being unencumbered with stuff. Maybe freedom is being unattached. Maybe being free is a shedding of a cocoon into a new way of flying. Maybe freedom is letting yourself change, letting go of the familiar and stepping into the unknown. Maybe freedom is faith. Maybe freedom is being free from your ego. Maybe freedom is surrender. Maybe freedom is expansion, devotion, expression. Think about the nature of freedom for you, where it is now and where you want it to be. And think about freedom as gratitude. Gratitude for belonging to what really is. Gratitude for the journey and for coming home. Thank you, God. And now let us return to this time and place and be with one another.